Hello, I'm Olivier Roubieu. Today I'm going to do troubleshoot tutorial, and I'm going to explain what can go wrong when you're using an airbrush and how to fix all those problems. Okay, so the first problem is sometimes you're painting and the paint's not coming out properly, so it's not consistent. It's probably that the paint is too thick. So the best thing is take it out, dilute it, and then put it back, and then carry on painting. You can use water or a reducer, or depending on the paint you're using. If it's water-based paint, alcohol-based paint, just use the manufacturer's reducer. If you're using acrylic, then obviously use water. Whatever, you get the point. Also, if you're painting water and it works fine, and then when you put your paint, it's not working fine, then you know it's the paint. If you're putting water in a cup, no paint, and it's still not coming out properly, then it's another problem. Okay, number two, lots of grain. Sometimes when you paint, there can be a lot of grain, and it can be not really smooth as opposed to what you would get with an airbrush, which is really smooth. That's often due to the pressure in the compressor. You don't have enough pressure. You're probably on like 20 psi or something like that, which can be cool. I use it sometimes when I want to do that kind of effect, but most of the time you stay at between 35 to 55, and that's pretty cool. 40 is kind of like the average. I'm gonna put this on, my neck is burning, it's hot in here. Yeah, so that's another thing. So if you get that problem, just make sure you increase the pressure in your compressor, and that should sort it out. Number three, yeah, sometimes you're painting, everything is fine, and then eventually it stops working properly. That's because you probably have been painting for a while, and then some of the paint has dried up in there, and it's creating like rocks or whatever, and it's stopping it's just getting in the way between the nozzle and the needle, so it's not allowing it to go properly. You got two solutions: empty the paint, clean the old airbrush. That's a bit drastic. Or you can just stop the front, allowing just a little bit of air to go through, and then you press and pull back, so that kind of bubbles up, and what it does, it kicks it back up. And if it's a small sort of a small rock, whatever, I mean, it's not rock, it's paint, but if it's a small amount of dried paint, eventually it'll go through, and that's fine. Most of the time that's what happens. If you've been painting for a long time, chances are you may have to clean the airbrush again. Cool. Number four, water-like spots. Too much paint. Oh yeah, if you're using this Auto Air Colors or Createx, which is the one I'm using, it's very good paint. I've got loads of good things to say about it. The only thing is it's a paint you apply very, very lightly. So you put on the surface that you're painting, you want to put about 3 coats to get a nice finish. Sometimes 4 or 5, depending. If you're using candy pigment, sometimes you may want to put 7 or 8, depending on the effect you want to get. But obviously that's down to how you paint and how you want to do it. So if you're getting some sort of blisters or spots or fish eyes or whatever they're called in your paint, that's because you're painting too wet. You're trying to cover the whole thing straight away. When you're using this paint, which is the same as Createx, you want to apply a thin coat, which doesn't look great. Second coat, still not quite right, and the third coat, it's in most cases is enough. Sometimes 4 coats. Cool. Number 5. Sometimes when you're painting and you're close to your canvas or your work, whatever, you get a spider, and you're not doing anything wrong. The paint is good, the pressure is good, but you get this, this kind of thing. That's because you got air in your compressor. It helps if you got one of those things, which traps the water in there, and then you can get rid of the water. But every time you finish working with your compressor, it's always important to empty the tank, because otherwise it's all the pressure turns into water, and then it eats up the metal and turns into rust, and it's just eventually the magnets that, like this one, the magnets that are auto-stopping the compressor, because they have so much rust, they're not magnetized anymore, so your compressor never stops and it burns, and it's happened to me. So make sure you always empty it and you'll be fine. Number 6, oh yeah, sometimes you may be painting That's especially if you live in Europe or anywhere like Canada or anywhere that's cold. Sometimes you're painting, the paint is diluted properly, the airbrush is clean, everything is good, but it's just not coming out. And obviously you don't want to keep adding more water, because otherwise the pigments and the binding agents are going to be reduced and your paint is not going to be that strong. So it's simply too cold. So when I was painting in the winter in my workshop, it was so freezing, the paint wasn't coming out properly. And all it took was to wrap them in a sort of cloth, put them on the radiator. Obviously if I put them on the radiator, it would have just melted the bottle, but wrap them in a cloth, and that was enough to warm them up, and it was painting fine. So if that's the case, you know, if it doesn't work, it might just be a bit too cold, so check that out. Bubbles in the cup. Sometimes, this is mainly for an airbrush that you've been using for a while. It wouldn't happen on a new airbrush. Sometimes when you're painting, you see in here, it just bubbles up. Not like, if you're doing this, obviously it's meant to bubble up. But when you're just painting normally and you see it just bubbling up and everything, and it's not coming out properly, it's just coming out a lot thinner than it should, that's because this is slightly unscrewed, or you've got dry paint in there that's stopping it from being screwed all the way to the end, or the gasket is gone. I've actually used the gasket from here and put it there, and I know some other people have done that. This has to be sealed properly. If not, it's just going to bubble up and you won't get the full picture. Cool. Number 8. Pull back, nothing happens. What did I mean? Yes, sometimes when you're painting, it's the same with dry paint. So if I'm, obviously you're pushing down for the pressure and you're pulling back for the paint. By the way, if you want to see more tutorials about airbrushing and how to use an airbrush and stuff, let me know and I'll get to work. Yeah, so if you're doing it properly and then you're just pulling out this amount, you should have this amount of paint, this amount of paint, and so on. But if you're pulling out a little bit and nothing happens, don't keep pulling back, because you've got dry paint in there and eventually you're going to keep pulling back and then loads of paint is going to come out. And if you're just putting a tiny bit, chances are you're really close to your canvas, it's going to mess it up. So every time that happens, and it happens all the time, it's normal, when that happens, so nothing happens, just go full blast a couple of times and then carry on again, and then do that if that happens again. And if it keeps happening, obviously empty the cup, clean the airbrush, and carry on. Number 9. Yeah. Sometimes the paint will be right, the compressor will be right, the pressure, everything will be right, but the airbrush is to blame. I use an iWater Eclipse HPCS, which means it's got a cup, and HPBCS, I think, is the one of the bottle. This is crazy good. I mean, this was £120 in the UK. Get it. Just don't think, get it. You know, I've had some cheaper airbrushes. I've also had a Revolution from iWater. It was okay. I was probably to blame, so I can't really give you an accurate judgment. But this one is perfect. Get it. A quick note about the bottles in the cup. If you're the sort of person that paints big, like portraits, you know, so different colors, a bottle is a good idea because you can change between colors quickly and then you're painting a big amount, so that's cool. By the way, this is a 0.5, not a 0.35. I like 0.5 because it's still very thin, very sharp, but it's easier to paint with, so that's down to your preference. Yeah, so if you're changing colors a lot, a bottle is a good idea. I like this because even if I change colors, it's not difficult, and you use a lot less paint. With this, you can put 3 drops, do details for a while, it's enough. With a bottle, you need to put minimum of this amount, so you end up wasting paint all the time. And when you put the paint back in the bottle, it's been mixed with oxygen, so it sort of dries up and it's not always that good. Again, I might be to blame on that one, but yeah. So pick what you like. Number 9. Nope, we're done that. Number 10. Yeah, number 10. If you have paint coming out. Oh yeah. Sometimes, and that happens after you've been painting for about 8 hours or whatever. You've been doing a job with loads of details. What you might find is when you oh, by the way, a quick tip: if you want to get finer detail, take this off, but careful not to get the needle on your canvas or whatever. Yeah, what you find is when you've been painting for a while. This is a horrible tutorial. Sorry. When you've been painting for a while, sometimes when you just press on the pressure, paint comes out. As opposed to obviously when you do this, no paint should come out. It's only when you pull it back. But because you've been painting, the nut at the back is loose. So what you do is just pull the needle back a bit, and then you push the needle, and then you pull, you twist, push, twist, push, twist, push, twist, until it's tight. And then this way, obviously you don't want to push it too far because you'll crack the nozzle. Once it's cracked, you got to change it, and it's a pain. So yeah, so you push it back. But if the problem still happens, that means you got paint which has started drying up around the nozzle. So you got to take the whole airbrush apart and clean it, and that should sort it out. Okay, so these are the 10 things. On another note, if you still got problems with your airbrush, it's just not clean enough. Most of the time, it's in 2 cases it'll be the compressor, in which case there's one thing I didn't talk about actually. Sometimes if you're painting, if the paint is fluid enough but it's still not coming out, it's because there's too much pressure in your compressor. I don't know if I said it or not, whatever. So sometimes if you go to like 60 or whatever, especially with a traditional compressor as opposed to a mini compressor, mini pistons, that tends to happen. I painted in the garage once and I had to use my mini compressor because theirs just had too much pressure, it wasn't working. So that's to keep an eye on. But yeah, everything else, every other problem will be because it's not clean enough. So, and if you've been painting for a while, then obviously stop, clean it thoroughly and carry on. And sometimes, in some cases, I've cleaned the airbrush, sort of, well enough, and it still wasn't working. So in that case, you gotta stop, take it apart, clean it properly, take your time, do it again, and you'll find it's all good. It's obviously, it's a tool that requires a lot, it's very precise, and it requires a lot of attention, it needs to be clean. So I hope this helped. Let me know what you want to see next. Anything about murals, spray cans, airbrushing, marker pens, brushes, whatever you want to know, whatever you want to learn, let me know. I'll do a tutorial on that. Again, a new video every Friday. Check out my Instagram and my website. The blog has got all the detail, but I'm still working on the website, so yeah. But yeah, let me know what you want to learn, what you want to see, and I'll get to it. I'll see you next week. Bye.